Hey everybody, today I'm going to be showing you how to install SuperATV's winch mount and winch on this Honda Talon 1000. So let's jump right in. The first thing that we're going to do is remove our bumper from our machine. We're going to need to remove this bolt here, these two Allen headed screws here, and then the two bolts right here. Then we'll repeat the steps for the opposite side. Once all our hardware is removed, we're going to grab a hold of our bumper and just wiggle it straight out from the machine. Once we have our bumper removed and on the table, we're going to grab a tape measure and we're going to measure a 1/2 inch off of this front bar. This is a SuperATV bumper, but the installation will be exactly the same for a factory bumper. So we have our factory bumper here. We already have our holes drilled, but essentially we're just going to measure a 1/2 inch up, make a mark, and then we'll grab our bracket and line it up. We'll do the same thing over here on the opposite side. So now that we've made our marks, what we're going to do is continue this mark around the side. So if you have a flat piece of metal or anything like that, you can use that to guide your line. Now we have our line on here. We're going to go ahead and take our bracket. We're going to line it up with the line that we just made, and we're just going to trace around this. We're going to trace around our hole too. I'm just going to fill the hole in with the marker there. Alright, so that way we know whenever we go to put this on here, it needs to line up just like that. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to drill straight through. Alright, once we have our initial hole drilled, we want to make sure that we keep our drill as straight as we can keep it and drill through the opposite side. Just want to make sure our bracket's going to line up good with the hole, so it lines up good there. And we're just going to repeat these same steps over here on the opposite side. Once we have our holes drilled and all of our marker or paint marker, whatever you use, cleaned up, another thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you blow out these tubes from wherever you drilled through. Both sides, there'll be metal shavings down in there. You don't want to leave that. Over time it's going to rust and cause issues, so we went ahead and blew everything out real nice, cleaned it up. So now we're going to grab our brackets that we use to mark our holes. We're going to grab one of our long M8 bolts. We're just going to slide it straight through like that. And we'll do this on both sides. Then we're going to grab our Fairlead bracket. We're going to slide them onto the bolts, just like that. And we're going to grab our M8 nuts, the nylock nuts that are provided in the hardware kit. We'll go ahead and we'll thread these on. We don't want to fully tighten anything just yet. We're just going to kind of get everything put together here. We're going to grab our M8 by 20 millimeter hardware, 2 for each side. And we're going to line up our bracket with our Fairlead mount. And these will actually just thread right into the mount. And they are adjustable. They do have cutouts so you can move them around. I'm just going to go ahead and run these in by hand. We're just going to flip it up, take a look at it, make sure it looks good and straight. So now we're going to grab our Allen headed hardware and we're going to install our Fairlead plate here. You'll just take your Allen headed screw, slide it through the front, just like that, on both sides. We'll put our nuts on the bottom. If you are running a 4,500 or 5,000 pound winch, you'll just bolt this directly to the Fairlead bracket. If you are running a 3,500 pound winch, you'll have to use the adapter, which will be in the kit with your winch. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to fully tighten all this hardware. Now we're going to take our bumper and get it reinstalled. You just want to grab your tabs of your fascia and slide them out of the way. Now we're going to install our winch mounting plate. You want to angle this portion towards the front of the machine. Then once you get it in, just slide it right up to where the factory bolts lined up. But we're not going to use our factory bolts. We're going to use the provided M8 bolts that came in the hardware kit. And you don't want to fully tighten them just yet. You just want to make sure your holes are lined up and just get the bolts started. And at this time, we're going to go through and start all of our hardware that secures the bumper to the machine. We don't want to tighten anything just yet. We're just going to go through, get a couple threads started on all of our bolts. Next, we're going to grab our tube clamps and the rest of our M8 hardware. It'll be the last bit of hardware that's left in the hardware kit. We're going to go ahead and they'll install just like this right around the cage of the machine. Go through and start all our screws. Then we'll do the same exact thing for the opposite side. Once we have all of our hardware started, now we're going to go through and fully tighten all the hardware. So now we've got our new SuperATV 4,500 pound winch, and we're ready to get it installed on our Honda Talon here. What we're going to do is first put the winch in free spool mode. We're going to want to pull some of the rope out, and while it's nice and easy, it's not mounted up yet, let's go ahead and run our winch rope through our Fairlead. And then we're going to take the winch and we're going to slide it in sideways. And we're going to line it up to the outer holes, because we are running a 4,500 pound winch today. If you're running a 3,500 pound, you'd go to the innermost holes. Once we have our holes lined up, install the hardware, a lock washer and a washer, and make sure your lock washer's first, then your washer. Pick up our winch, stick our bolt through, kind of feel around. Just want to get it ran in there by hand. We'll go ahead and do the lower bolt as well. Once we have all our hardware started, we're going to go ahead and fully tighten it. So now that we have our winch fully tightened, and we have our rope pulled through our Fairlead here, we're going to go ahead and remove our Clevis hook. And we'll remove the pin out of it. And we'll take our pin and we'll slide it right back through the Clevis onto the winch rope. We'll grab our cotter pin and install it. We'll just bend it away from itself. Then we'll grab our pull strap. We'll slide it right into the Clevis hook. Then we're going to grab our stop block. We're going to make it so the flat portion of it is going to be going towards the machine. At the side with the opening is going towards the Clevis hook. So we'll just put it right over the rope just like that. And we'll grab the provided hardware in the kit. You're going to have a long Allen headed screw and washers and lock nuts. You put the washer on the screw, and you'll take your nylock nut, go ahead and get it started. Once you have all your hardware started, just go ahead and slide the stop block all the way down to the end of the winch rope, and then you'll just go through and fully tighten the hardware, and then it's time to get the winch wired up. All right, so now that we've got our winch installed, we're going to come up here to the hood. Go ahead and pick up on each of these tabs, rotate them, and remove the hood from the machine. And we're going to grab our solenoid out of the kit, and I like to mount my solenoid right here on this crossbar of the frame. So it'll sit just like this. We'll still have plenty of clearance for the hood, which is the only thing that we'd make contact with. So we'll just get it dropped down as low as we can. And then we'll just take a paint marker. Mark our holes. And this one can be a little bit harder to mark. Then as you can see, there's a little rubber covering here. It just kind of slides over a couple different tabs. Just go ahead and pick that up and slide it down out of the way. That way we can get enough room to get in here to drill these holes. All right, so now what I'm gonna do, just to make sure that my holes are lined up good, I'm gonna take this side right here, where all of the studs are, put my screw through it, slide it through the previously drilled hole, and then just take the paint marker and mark the other side, just again to double check that the holes are in the right position. So once we have the other hole exactly where it needs to be, just go ahead and drill it as well. We'll grab another piece of hardware, another screw, which these screws will be the small screws provided in the winch kit. Just take it, get our holes lined up. So now we slide a lock washer and washer on. Have to reach in, easiest way that you find. And just go ahead and get it started pretty much all the way down as far as we can get it by hand. Then we'll do the exact same thing for this opposite side over here. Once we have both sides started, we'll just go through and fully tighten the hardware. The next thing we're going to do is remove the following push pins from the inner fender well panel. This one here, this one here, this one, this one, that one, this one up here, and then there's going to be one up here on top. We've already went ahead and pulled all the centers out of all of our push pins just to make it go by a little bit faster. So we're just going to go through and remove all of the ones that we pointed to. And we'll just remove this panel. Once you look up inside of this panel here, right by the power steering unit, you're gonna see you have a hot and a ground wire. These will absolutely be acceptable to use as the hot and the ground on our winch. So obviously black is gonna be the ground. So we can go ahead and feed it to the black stud on our solenoid. So we'll just go ahead and remove the nut off of the black stud. You're gonna see that you have a lock washer as well as a regular washer. Just go ahead and pull the lock washer off. Then take this, and you could probably run it back in behind here just to make it look a little bit cleaner. Slide it onto the black stud. Put your lock washer back on. And we can take our red wire and run it through here as well. And we went ahead and we taped ours up because it is already plugged in the rear, which we're going to show you how to do. And then we're just going to do the same thing with our red wire. Just going to slide it onto our red terminal here. Put our lock washer on. And then our nut. And you'll just want to make sure that if this red wire is powered up already on your machine, that you're keeping it separated from either of the two studs. That way you don't get zapped. So we're gonna come back here to the driver's side, right next to your shock. You're gonna see you're gonna have a battery box. It's gonna have 3 holders on it. Just wanna grab a hold of each of them, pop them all 3 loose, pop this cover off. This is where the battery's at on the Talon. So as you can see here, you're gonna have some red wires running up to this solenoid up here. And you're also gonna have a ground wire. Now, these wires will not be hooked up on your specific machine unless somebody's already hooked them up. So to get in there a little bit easier, you can probably take your battery hold down off. It'll just flip down and off. You can grab a hold of your battery, wiggle it out, and then you'll see your wires running up to the top, but they won't be hooked in, obviously. You're gonna have to hook them on. So you'll have a little 10mm nut right up here on the top, and then a little 10mm nut up here. You wanna make sure that you ground the black wire and hook the red wire to the hot side or the red side. Again, these wires will not be hooked up. They will just be hanging out back here in the back of the battery box. You'll have to undo this nut as well as this nut, wire them in, and then tighten them back down. Once you've done that, your red wire that's running up to the front that we have wired into the solenoid will be directly powered to the battery. Once you've got those hooked in, go ahead and put your battery strap back on. As well as your battery box cover. Don't forget to put your snaps back on. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and get our yellow and blue wires out of the kit, cut the zip ties, unravel them. We're gonna feed them down. So on your top stud, it's gonna be yellow. On your bottom stud, it'll be blue. Obviously, we have a yellow and a blue wire. We'll start with the yellow because it's on top. Take it and feed it straight down underneath here, like it would be ran. Feed it down around through here, next to the coolant jug, beside your radiator hose, and then right to the top of your winch. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and attach it down here, just to kind of mock it up for now. That way we have a good reference of how long our wires need to be. And we'll just take our blue wire, and since we're already down here, I'm just gonna feed it back up and through. I just like to make sure that my wires take the same route. So we'll do the same thing with our blue wire. We're just gonna get it mocked up in position, just like it's gonna be whenever it's completely wired in. So it'll look something like that. Obviously, it'll look a lot cleaner once we're done. So we're just gonna lay this wire up here. I usually like to leave a little bit of slack. That way, if I do make a mistake, I have a little bit of room there to where I can make another connection. So we just got it laid up there for the yellow or for the blue. Now we're gonna do the yellow. Okay. Just grab our wires, pull them right back down and through. Go ahead and remove them from the winch. So we're gonna get in our kit here. As you can see, there's heat shrink in there. There's connectors, there's everything that we need. Whenever you make these connections, make sure that you slide the heat shrink on first, then make your connection, and then go ahead and crimp it down and heat shrink it. So next we're just gonna take our wires and route them down just like we did previously when we were mocking everything up. And once we get them down here close, we'll come up top, make our connection on our solenoid. Just take your nut off. Then your lock washer, install your wire, lock washer the nut. Same process, nothing changed. We'll do the same thing for the other wire. So we'll get it laid down in there in position as well. We'll come down here, go ahead and hand snug those. Then we're gonna come down here. We went ahead and got our terminal covers out of the wiring kit. We're gonna slide one of these on each of our connections going onto the winch here. Remove a washer, slide the wire on, reinstall the washer, as well as the nut. Do the same thing for the lower wire, the blue wire. Slide your washer on. Then we're just going to go through and fully tighten all the hardware on the solenoid as well as the winch. Once you have your hardware tightened down here on the winch, make sure you just pull your coverings over top the connections. So once you have all of the hardware fully tightened, you're going to see right down here, you're going to have a plug. And it'll come apart. It'll look just like this. Well, this wire on the left, the white one with the black stripe, that's a keyed on power source. We went ahead and probed it, checked it all out, and we went ahead and unplugged the dummy plug off of it. So to get the plug off the frame, there's a little tab right here on the back side. Just pull up on that, then you can slide it off of the actual tab on the frame. It has two spots back here where a hot and a ground pin could go. Obviously, we went ahead and unpinned the hot side and found the correct pin and installed it. Now, this is the best way to do it. You don't have to do it this way. You could just tap in to this white wire that we just showed you. That's going to be the keyed on power source. You could crimp it, or you could cut it and then crimp a connection to it. You could use a Scotch lock, anything that you can get the power from, that wire right there. This just seemed to be the best option for us. We had pins on hand. We just found what size pin it was, put it in the connector, and now when we plug it in, turn the key on, this wire right here gets hot. So we've located our keyed on power source. We told you where the power source is at. However you decide to wire it up, completely up to you. Just make sure obviously you got a good connection, make sure it's functioning properly. We're gonna go ahead and plug this back in to where it was, and we're gonna go inside and we're gonna show you how to install our rocker switch panel as well as our dash mounted rocker switch. All right, so obviously on the Talons, there's not a very good spot to mount a rocker switch. Well, that's what we're gonna be using for this install, is our dash mounted rocker switch. So with that being said, and there not really being a good place to mount it, we came out with a rocker switch panel. So I highly advise you all to pick one up if you don't already have one. Very easy installation, very nice, very easy, great product to use. So in each corner here, inside the cubby, you're gonna see that there's a little hole. What we did is we drilled that hole out big enough for this plug right here to fit through. Take your rocker switch panel, get it installed, lay it up there to where it looks good. You can get a screw gun, or you can just get it lined up. See right there, just a Phillips head screwdriver will put these in. You don't have to use a screw gun or anything like that, a drill. Just make sure you get it straight. We didn't have to countersink any holes or anything like that. Just got it lined up. Pushed on the screws a little bit while we were installing them, and they just go right into position, no problem. Alright, so that's how simple it is to install the rocker switch panel. Very easy install, nothing to it. So if you already had the rocker switch panel installed, obviously you just want to pop it apart real quick, which now we already have our holes lined up, so it goes back together nice and easy. Just pull all 4 of your screws out. Then you take one of your rocker switch plugs, which will be these right here. Just snap them out. So we have one of our rocker switch knockouts knocked out. Just going to run our wiring right through here. And then we're going to go right down through the hole that we created previously. We're just going to feed all our harness through there. That way we can get a hold of it on the outside. And we can just lay our panel back up into position. We'll set our hardware aside for the time being. We're going to head back out to the front, make some connections, and then all of our excess will actually just bundle up behind our panel here. So now we're going to reach up underneath the dash, grab a hold of the wires that we previously fed through. One of them will go right to this connection here on the bottom of the solenoid. Then this other one will go to our keyed on power source, which, like we talked about earlier, this right here is our keyed on power source wire. So now we can just take our bullet connector or any style of connector that you have that you'd like to utilize. Make sure that we have our keyed on power source attached, made a good connection. We can start feeding our harness and everything back in towards the machine. And then once we have it all pulled through, then we'll come out here, make sure all our wires are tied up nice and clean, and then check the winch. We're going to go ahead and get our switch popped in to the panel, just like that. And then we'll just kind of bundle up our wiring, just like it was when it was packaged up. And we'll just kind of lay it into the cubby, just like that. And then just to double check everything to make sure everything's working. Winch is working good. So now we'll go ahead, screw our panel back down. You're going to see in your kit, you're going to have a remote. On this remote, you're going to have a pull tab. You want to grab a hold of it and just wiggle it right out. Once you have it removed, you can hold down both buttons on your winch controller, and with the key on, you can control your winch. Now to power this off, you hold both buttons down and the red light will shut off. So now we have everything wired up on the machine. The last thing that we personally need to do is go through, tidy up our wiring as best as we possibly can. Just make it look nice, you know, use some zip ties, get everything tied up out of the way, reinstall a few panels, but once you've done that, that's all there is to it to install SuperATV's 4,500 pound winch and winch mount on this Honda Talon 1000. For more information on this winch or winch mount or any of SuperATV's great products, feel free to give us a call at 855-743-3427 or check us out online at superatv.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.